Let's do The Walk, which is the new film by Robert Zemeckis. In 2008, James Marsh's documentary, Man on Wire, pretty much told the story of Philippe Petit. I mean, it was an absolutely extraordinary documentary about the Frenchman who, in 1974, executed an illegal high wire act between the newly built roofs of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. And it's an extraordinary documentary. It includes dramatizations and interviews and reconstructions and all that stuff. And it's a really brilliant piece of work. I think gets right under the skin of the man himself, or Philippe Petit, who I have to say I've met. I met him and I kissed his feet, because I thought, when am I ever going to get the feet that did that extraordinary feat?
You kissed his feet?
I did, yeah, I did. I was just because. And anyway, so you're
wearing shoes.
Yes, I get him to take his shoes off, but it's just, those are the feet that walked on that rope. Anyway,
yes.
The one thing that's missing from that documentary is moving footage of the walk, which is captured actually in just still photography and in the incredibly vivid memories of those who saw it. Robert Zemeckis has now sort of seen fit to go back and do the whole thing as a dramatization, featuring as its sort of central pièce de résistance an extraordinary sequence in which he basically recreates the walk and puts you up there on the wire. Before that, we get the backstory of how the thing came together with Joseph Gordon-Levitt playing Philippe Petit with a slightly wobbly French accent. Here's a clip.
I make my way to the top. Nobody stops me. And I find myself standing on an island floating in midair on the edge of the void. Of course, I automatically look across to the opposite tower, but then I have to dare to look down. Now, I think I know the void. I'm a wire walker. The void is my domain, yes? Well, not this void. But still, I gather the courage to whisper. I whisper so the demons won't hear me. It's impossible. But I'll do it.
And his father smelt of
elderberry. So no, it is. It is slightly cold accent. And in fact, actually, the way the narration is done is it's got a kind of carnival-esque quality to it. At the beginning, he goes, "Hello, I am Philippe Petit. I'm going to tell you how I did all this stuff." But he does it in that sort of in the Joseph Gordon-Levitt accent. So, in the retelling of the story and the recreation of the how we got here and how we got to the thing, it is. I have to say, in certain places, pretty creaky. Ben Kingsley's doing yet another one of his experimenting with a no fixed location accent as the Czech French Papa Rudy, who is the mentor. And also, they've taken some of the rougher edges off the story, specifically about his relationship with Annie Alex, which is one of the most interesting things about the documentary, because one of the things that the documentary does is it doesn't shy away from understanding what fame brings with it, and how actually, in order to be the kind of person who would do this, you have to be single-minded, sometimes in a way which is utterly selfish and utterly exclusive. So there are a lot of things in which the documentary is absolutely untouchable. I still think the documentary remains an untouchable work which tells this very perfectly. However, there is the central sequence in which what Robert Zemeckis does is to say, okay, well, fine, well, this is what you can't have seen. We're going to put you up there on the wire. And I have to say, it was visceral and then some. So I saw it in laser projected IMAX 3D.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Scary.
Wow. And I honestly, and I feel foolish saying this, there was a moment watching it that I had to hide. I had to hide my eyes, because, I mean, I'm scared of heights anyway, as I think but I think even if you weren't scared of heights, what Zemeckis has managed to do, because he is great at orchestrating this. I mean, he is somebody who understands how to make CG and live action come together fairly seamlessly. I mean, he's really been doing that since the days of Forrest Gump, since the days of that feather floating through the opening sequence of Forrest Gump. And it's it's not to do with spectacular CG that creates stuff you couldn't see elsewhere. It's to do with using CG to create something that looks real, that looks natural. And that whole sequence, which is really, I mean, you've seen it on the poster, and it's really the thing. It does something that the documentary couldn't possibly do, because that footage doesn't exist, but it also does something that very little other cinema could do, which is that it puts you up there on that wire. And honestly, I was clinging onto the edge of the cinema seat. I was both exhilarated and terrified at the same time. I kept thinking, I want this to be over, because the thing is, I know how it. I know. Philippe Petit is around.
You've kissed his feet.
I've kissed his feet, and he's been. Everyone's seen the documentary. We all know this story. But you also know that because of the way that the thing panned out, there are certain still photographs of things that have to happen before because he was on the wire for a long time. He didn't just walk. What he did was he walked one way and then he came back the other way, and then the police turned up. So he walked off again, and then he came back, and then he sits down, and then he lies down, and then he stands up. And there's a wonderful moment in the documentary when the policeman says, the man dancing on the wire. He wasn't walking on the wire. He was dancing on the wire. And that's what it's like. And actually, and people often are sort of, they denigrate the visceral cinema, the cinema of experience. But honestly, that sequence, that central sequence of the walk, it was genuinely breathtaking.